Rich Rodriguez takes the big stage in Frisco, Texas for Big 12 Media Days. We discuss what he said here today on Between The Eers. How are we doing, everybody? Skylar Callan here on this Wednesday afternoon on another edition of Between The Eers. Big 12 Media Days. Day number 2 is underway as we record this. Rich Rodriguez just hopped off the stage. He's now making his other media rounds, talking to some radio people and whatnot. So figured we'd hop on here really quick to just kind of discuss, recap what he talked about, which, to be honest, wasn't all that much as expected. It was pretty much always going to be a buttoned-up thing. A lot of what you've already heard a million times since he's been back in Morgantown, but we'll talk about that here. But before we do, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Next week, we'll have Eugene Napoleon back with us for another episode of BTE, and then he'll join us sometime in the early portion of August before we really ramp things up, and, of course, have him on every week throughout the season as he helps me preview every West Virginia game on the Walk Thru GameDay Show. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified anytime a new episode of Between The Eers, the Walk Thru GameDay Show, or Mountaineer postgame drops. So, Rich Rodriguez, what was he asked today? What did he talk about? Well, again, nothing earth-shattering here. Didn't reveal much of anything. Talked about the roster differences between WVU and Jacksonville State in terms of how you build the roster construction, being in the same conference as Arizona. Of course, that's one of the places he was a head coach at for a handful of years. Advantages and difficulties of returning to WVU, the revenue share situation that popped through in the last month or so with the House settlement, how salary cap now affects his plans and everybody else around college football. Also talked about how his perspective on things have changed in the last 20 years, his philosophy offensively, the talent of quarterbacks in the Big 12 along with his own, and why he continues to keep coaching instead of stepping away like some of the other older head coaches, the more seasoned coaches in college football, like we've seen in recent memory with either Nick Saban retiring, Jim Harbaugh going back to the NFL, so on and so forth. He gave a pretty funny answer on that one, which was more of like a, hey, I'd rather do this than any other type of job type of thing. But if you want to read the full quote or any of the full quotes, please go to our site, SI West Virginia, and it'll be the very first thing that pops up unless I publish an article between now and the time that you watch this. It'll be on there. You can check it out on my Twitter as well at Callahan_. But to make it easier for you, I'll also put the link here at the bottom of the YouTube description so you can just go and check it out. Every single thing that he talked about on the big stage will be there. We'll have some other stories coming out from his other radio appearances and whatnot. So a lot of content coming your way. It's not going to slow down for the next handful of days. Also on Sunday, I am planning to reveal my Big 12 preseason power rankings. Of course, we talked about it a few days ago. The Big 12 did away with the preseason poll. I said, whatever, we're still going to do our own thing. So I'm going to make sure I have mine out between sometime now and Sunday, hopefully within the next couple of days, so I can rehash it, explain myself here on BTE, giving you my reasoning for where I put WVU and everybody else. So, again, nothing much came out of this, Big 12 Media Day. They never really do. It's more so just an unofficial kickoff to a new start of the season to get more excitement. It's just an event to get people together. I actually went to Big 12 Media Day. I think it was actually Neil's first year, 2019, and it was a lot of fun. Got to meet with a lot of media people out there that I hadn't seen in a long time, that are out of market, and it was just a good time. But as far as the actual event is concerned, you're not going to get a depth chart anymore. That's a thing of the past. You're not going to get coaches revealing starting quarterbacks, at least not very often, especially not Rich Rodriguez. But he did talk about the fact that he believes he has 3 quarterbacks. Now, he kind of walked himself back a little bit and said 5 later on to include the other 2, Khalil Wilkins and Scotty Fox. But we're being let's be honest here. There's really three names in the mix for the starting quarterback job. You all know Nico Markiol, Jalen Henderson, the Texas A&M transfer. But the one guy that I kind of mentioned a few weeks back, and I've said it, hey, like I've heard some encouraging things out of this guy. No one's talking about him, probably rightfully so because of the other two in that room. But don't sleep on Max Brown. The Charlotte transfer was in a very, very bad ecosystem last year at Charlotte. That offense was atrocious all the way across offensive line, skill positions, just a bad situation that he was in there. He also dealt with some injuries, but he also played at Florida. It's where he started his career. He even started a game against, I believe it was Florida State or Miami. I believe it was Florida State. So he has some experience. He was a pretty decently recruited kid out of high school. Obviously, got an opportunity to play at Florida, so there's something there. But he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Hasn't been in a offense that really suits him well, and that's why I don't think we should just completely rule out the fact that he's a part of this competition. But it's probably Nico or Jalen. I mean, we've talked about these two seemingly all off season long. We're going to continue to talk about it. It's probably going to come down to those two. But this, to me, is more of a conversation that this is probably the best quarterback room in terms of the depth that Rich Rod has in that group than we've seen in a pretty long time. I can't remember the last time a West Virginia quarterback room had three. I don't know if you want to call it reliable, viable, whatever term you want to put out there, but there's three options that I think can go in there, operate the offense enough to the fact where you're not just becoming one dimensional and everybody knows what's coming. I I do think there's a certain level of trust that each of them will have, and probably Nico's going to have more than Jalen, or vice versa, and then those one of those guys or both may have more than Max. But the fact that they have three quarterbacks is a beautiful luxury to have. Mike Gundy even said it today, and he spoke right before Rich Rod. And he said, keeping three quarterbacks that you can play, it's not really going to be a normal thing anymore. It's a thing of the past because guys are going to sit behind people. They don't want to stick around. They're going to want to bounce in the portal, go somewhere where they can play. And so having three trustworthy options just is not realistic, at least not on an annual basis. Year one here for Rich Rod, he has that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get elite quarterback play. It doesn't mean that Nico or Jalen or whoever wins the starting job is going to be a top three or four quarterback in the league. But it does provide a sense of security in the fact that you have multiple guys that even if one guy goes down, whoever becomes the starter, if he goes down, you can still run your offense because you have a third option. This was kind of a similar situation last year when WVU went out and got Ryder Burton from BYU. Probably didn't fit nearly as much as what we had thought he would. It probably wasn't as far along as what we thought he would be, but they still felt like just having Ryder Burton on the roster a year ago gave them that opportunity to where, hey, if Garrett gets hurt, Nico can go in there and do his thing, and we don't have to, be extremely careful with him like they did the previous year when he had to fill in for Garrett in the backyard brawl against Texas Tech and so on and so forth. So it's a similar setup to last year, but the floor of this quarterback room is much, much higher than what it was a year ago, and much higher than, again, any quarterback room at WVU that I can remember. Um, but the ceiling of it is the big question mark. Who is the starting quarterback? What's kind of level of player they going to produce? Is it going to be top tier? Is it going to be elite? Is it going to be average, above average? Is it going to be just enough to keep them in games and give them a chance to win? That's the big question mark. We have no idea about that. But that's really the only takeaway that I came from this Big 12 Media Day for Rich Rod, at least on the big stage. He kind of even talked about it on the ESPN Plus set. So he's got three guys that he believes in, including Max Brown. Now, but we get a starting quarterback named at the start of camp, middle of camp, end of camp. My guess is probably the latter. I don't think it benefits Rich Rod or the offense or really anybody inside that building to reveal a starting quarterback beforehand. And I've mentioned numerous times here on this show, like I wouldn't be surprised if he just never even names a starter in going into that first game against Robert Morris. Why? You're going into a game but against an FCS opponent that you should decimate. I mean, you're assuming that you're playing both quarterbacks anyway, maybe three, depending on how things go. And if you're not playing multiple quarterbacks in that game, then you've got bigger problems. So why even reveal who the starter is? You get two of them in the game. You maybe get a third. You keep Ohio kind of guessing in week 2. You're probably going to have to play your starter in week 2 against Ohio anyways, but at least it keeps people guessing. It delays Pitt on their study a little bit because maybe they really only have a game and a half of tape instead of 2 full games or a game and 3/4. The whole point is there's no reason to unveil or reveal that. Rich Rod actually talked about this on In the Gun. What was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? When I asked him straight up about this, I was like, "Hey, is there any gamesmanship to this?" And he said, "No. If a guy emerges, he will name one, but at the same time, he agreed that it doesn't do him or the team any favors. So just relax if we get to mid-August or the week the week leading up into the game. If there's not a starting quarterback name, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have that decided. It's just maybe they want to keep it in the back pocket." But yeah, that's going to do it for us here today on Between the Ears. I'm Skylar Callan. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button at West Virginia on SI, and we'll take a few days off. We'll be here back on Sunday. The plan is to reveal my Big 12 preseason power rankings and give you an explanation as to why I have the Mountaineers where they are. Until then, be safe, take care, and we'll see you next time.